Okay, so this is super exciting. At the beginning of the year, we like to talk to Raphael Rey because he's so good with the astrology. I've always said he's going to be one of the big names in the future. Started out young, which is brilliant. So, yeah, 2025, what's going to happen? I'm going to sit back. Raf, welcome. What's going to happen?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for just the invite as always, and I really, really appreciate it. And I love being here and talking to your community because they're always really tapped in, they're always really welcoming, and everybody seems to be really interested in what comes next, right? Which is always half the battle, I believe. If you're already keeping your eye to the future, then you know you're going to be making moves at some point. So, can you guys see the presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, awesome.
yeah.
Okay, so obviously we're here to talk about 2025. It is going to be a monumental year, very, very interesting time. So I don't know if you can see these all across here. These will be the power players really of the year ahead, right? So we've got Venus here, the lady herself, we've got Mars, we've got Jupiter, we've got Neptune, and we've got Uranus. Now, for those of you that know astrology, you're probably already thinking, hang on a sec, what about Pluto? I will not be leaving Pluto out, I can assure you. But there's a few things that I want to discuss prior to that. So, the first thing is, in terms of its numerology, I don't know what happened to my nine. It got a little bit weird in the download, I think. That is actually a number nine, though. So, 2025, in terms of its numerology, is a 9 year. And I've called this the reboot of humanity because I truly believe that that's what this year is really all about. This is, when you think about the number nine, it is a number of endings, completions, culminations. It's where we wrap up a cycle and we really start to look forward to what comes next. Now, with nine energy, a lot of the time when people hear endings, completions, and culminations, they start to panic because they're like, is my job ending? Is my marriage falling apart? It's not always that. It's usually that whatever is obsolete will be highlighted and flagged to us. What that gives you is a really profound opportunity to say, this is no longer working. I need to change something about it. One of the beauties of nine energy is while it does represent endings, sometimes you can use this energy to replace something. So it doesn't always have to be that you have to throw it out completely. You can literally replace, reconfigure, redefine it in some way, shape, or form. Now, in terms of its energy, the energy, the reason I've got the Mars symbol here is because nine energy, as in terms of its numerology, is actually ruled by the planet Mars. So, as I said to you here, Mars is one of the power players of this year. As we've come into 2025, Mars is retrograde in the sign of Cancer, but it started that story back in 2024. And I'm going to explore sort of how that shows up and what it might mean further down the line. So, in terms of the characteristics of this year, when we're talking about the positive side of things, we're talking about revelation. You will definitely be seeing more secrets this year coming to light, things that we didn't know we were ready for, things that it's kind of like whether you're ready for them or not, they're coming. There is going to be more unveiling, there is going to be more things shared with us. There are going to be things that a lot of people maybe don't believe that come to the fore. Some of this might even be in the technological realm. Now, this number is also about compassion. This is the original humanitarian number. Out of all of the numerological cycles, nine is the number of compassion. It's the number of service to humanity. It's also the humanitarian energy. I would say, out of all of the numbers, even more so than the 11, the 22, and the 33, because they exist in a, magical realm all of their own. But here on the ground, nine energy is genuinely about that humanitarian effort. So we're going to see a lot more of this idea of community. I've put connective here as well. These are characteristics that are really going to permeate the year. So while you have, and I'm going to talk about the opposites in just a moment, but while you have this 9 year, this one of the, because everybody always asks me, and I know absolutely at some point I'm going to get this one and loves this one. Raf, I don't care about all of that. Is it going to be a good year? Right. So the question is, will it be a good year? If you can tap into all of these positive energies that are flowing through the year, connective is one of the big ones. And in true stellar fashion, she's already ahead of the curve, having just put on a summit and has already started building a network and a connection of people. So she's already tapped into that future energy, which, exactly, of course. This is really how you're going to win the year. It's going to be through connections, it's going to be through collaborations, it's going to be through community. If you try to give it the lone wolf this year, it's just not going to work, whether that's business, whether it's partnership, whether it's studies, whatever the case is. Do not go it alone. Last year, 2024, you had the energy to do that. Next year, 2026, you're going to have the energy to do that, to go it alone, to be that pioneer on your own and be the one person. This year requires a really strong foundation of connective energy that has a compassionate streak. Now, I've put RE, this is like redo, redefine, replace, release, all of those words that you can think of. This is a good year to do, right? Anything that has that sort of almost relieving quality to it. I was a bloody struggle to get my words out there. All right. So, in terms of the negatives, now, because nine is known as the number of compassion and connection and humanitarianism, at its real, true, worst opposite energy, it actually acts like the worst traits of the number one: selfish, escapist, right? Anywhere but here, which is why Dr. Olabunmi yesterday absolutely blew me away. That line of thought for this year is going to be really evident. You're going to see, I mean, we live in a world where people are trying to escape constantly anyway, but we're going to see a lot more of this year. So if you know you already have habits, patterns, proclivities towards certain things or certain types of addictions, this is a really good year to have self-compassion and to reach out in a connective manner to a community of some sort to get help to undo it. Like, so for me personally, I've got a whole bunch of friends that we've got like a WhatsApp group and we talk about lots of different stuff and we support each other with all of our things. So at the moment, I'm currently going sugar free and I'm surprised I haven't eaten my house. Right. But I'm doing it, and every single day they're like, "Oi, listen, get that sugar monster in check, Raf. They're not letting me fall off the wagon." And that's really going to help me this year. It can be very destructive, wasteful. Oh my goodness. Nine energy, and this is a really important point for your bank balance, people. Nine energy does not like waste. I don't care if it's a tatty old book or a pair of socks. If it's functional, give it away, give it to charity, put it on Facebook Marketplace. Anything that is surplus that you don't need, donate it or give it away. And if it's really trashed and nobody's ever going to use it, then obviously chuck it in the bin. But if it's still got use in it, don't throw things in the trash. And there's a reason for this. When you do that, you're signaling to the universal energy, I understand flow, send me what I need to replace this item that's left my presence. Really, really important. Last year, I said to everybody, your bank balance, don't ever let it hit zero because it was an 8 year and it will amplify that. This year, don't waste stuff, right? And I'm talking to all of you that like to chuck the toothpaste away when there's still about a quarter in the tube. All right, last and final. That's supposed to say scattered, but typo. All right, and scattered energy. Now, in terms of the things that it governs, the flora and fauna, right? This year, nature and the natural world. Shout out to Maria, by the way, the what was it she called herself? It was like a naturepreneur. That absolutely
Yeah,
blew me away. Fantastic. What an awesome thing. Flora and fauna, the natural world are going to absolutely be, if you need to escape, do it here. Go out into nature, spend time with animals. This year, they will absolutely soothe your soul more than ever. Energy, frequency, and vibration. Nine is the culmination point of three, six, and nine, which means your energy is going to announce you more than ever before. Your frequency and your vibration are going to attract. The frequency is going to bring your synchronicities, the vibration is going to attract the people. And this isn't to say that you have to be happy every moment of the year. That's not possible. We've got to keep our feet on the ground. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to have moments where, quite frankly, people just piss you off, right? But you've got to find a way to navigate that. Now, in terms of community and support, I cannot stress this enough. Whether it's that you give 5p a month to charity, right through to you join a march, or I really want to stage one of those, where you get a bunch of people together and they start cleaning up an area and they get rid of all of the rubbish. And I love that kind of thing. So I'm going to put my first one of those on this year, which I'm really excited about. So I know you're here for the astrology and you're probably thinking, yeah, this is all about numbers, Raf. What's going on? All right. Oh my gosh. So, sorry about that. My slide has cut in. Historical 9 years. The reason I'm getting you to think about this stuff in terms of its numerological aspect is because next year, or should I say this year, we're gonna see echoes of things from previous years. The last 9 year was 2016. What was happening for you around that time? What was
everything,
prominent? What was, sorry?
everything.
Yeah.
Everything. 216, 1971, 1998, they were all huge, life changing. 2007, first book published. Two-
Wow.
2016, my little granddaughter born. I got married I never told anyone, but I got married. I secretly got married. I ran away and got married. 1971, I gave birth to my first child. Uh, Poof.
Wow.
Everything you're saying is blowing my mind. I don't want
Look
to
at
interrupt, but
that's
I'm like,
incredible. So clearly, nine energy is very good to you, and it brings
mm,
really good things, which is
yeah.
wonderful. So you got another 9 year ahead of you. These are the historical 9 years. Think about these times in your life. What was happening for you? What was like a prominent theme? All right. Like just give that a consideration for a moment. Now, this one is, let me get rid of this. Why it's done that. My apologies, everyone. So, does history always repeat itself? So, this year we've got a really big phenomena that's taking place in the astrology, and it's called or it's known as the Saturn and Neptune conjunction. Now, this happens every sort of roughly 36 years, give or take. Now, the last time this took place, it was in the sign of Capricorn. Right now, this is a pretty big deal because this combination, the last time it took place in Capricorn, we saw the fall of the Berlin Wall. So a really big moment in a lot of ways, and it kind of gives you an idea. Now, when you think about Capricorn energy, you're talking about structures, rules, walls, quite literally like walls that hem things in or keep things out. This energy of Neptune and Saturn coming together, the erosion of that wall. So 1989, you've got the fall of the Berlin Wall. Now, that's a cardinal sign. And the cardinal signs are Aries, they are Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And the reason this is important is because a cardinal sign will usher in a new dynamic. It's the start of something new. Now, each sign in the zodiac is not just a pretty symbol and all the rest of it, it actually has a function. And the cardinal signs represent points at which the next season begins. So Aries is the advent of spring. That's why it's in bold. You're going to be hearing so much about Aries over the next half an hour, you're going to be sick of them. Right? So it's going to be a big year for the Aries people. And truth be told, it's going to be a big year for anyone that carries all four of these signs. So if you are an Aries, a Cancer, a Libra, or a Capricorn, or you've got a lot of planets in that place in your chart, big things are likely to be unfolding for you over the course of this year and beyond. So Cancer ushers in the summer. This is obviously all in the northern hemisphere. If you're in the southern, it's flipped. Libra ushers in the autumn, and Capricorn ushers in the winter, right? With the winter solstice. What we're here to talk about is this Aries portion of everything. Now, this is important for a few reasons, right? Um, Going back to this, just to close this out for now, the combination of the Saturn Neptune conjunction, the last one we had in Capricorn, that was the fall of the Berlin Wall. The one prior to that we had in the sign of Libra, and that was in 1952. So, what this says to me, and some of the things that you can look back for in history, interestingly enough, the Saturn and Neptune conjunction will coincide with big happenings that tend to unfold in Russia. The last one that took place in Libra, we saw the death of Stalin in 1953. We also saw the Korean armistice in 1953, which led to the demilitarized zone in Korea. And then in London, in December of 1952, we had the Great London Smog, which was like a massive, the fallout from it on an environmental level really created enough impetus for change to bring actual reforms for the environment. So this conjunction tends to coincide with big weather and or environmental patterns as well. So over the course of this year and 2026, we're likely to see, I mean, we've just seen what's happening right now with the fires in California, and we haven't even started with all of this stuff yet. We will see other, earth and, environmental shifts and changes. And those devastations that potentially unfold due to this combination. And remember, guys, the planets don't do anything to us. They don't sit there and say, right, you lot, we've had enough. So we're going to prod and poke you, and now we're going to flood your house or whatever. It's more a case of the sky is like a giant clock. Astrology tells us what's happening, yes, absolutely, but it usually tells us when it's happening as well. Now, this combination and these adverse weather patterns that take place are very likely to force us all to do a whole lot more of this, to come together. In times of crisis, it's not the leaders that bail us out or look after us, it's the communities that help each other. When I lived in Britwell when I was a kid, I'm a Britwell boy. I grew up, born and bred, right? And I'm very proud of that fact. And I tell you, one thing that you can honestly say about them, yes, it was a rough area and all the rest of it, and it had a reputation, but they looked after their own as a community. When one person struggled or suffered, even those who didn't necessarily have anything would be there in an instant. There's going to be more of that this year. And the more you lean into that community and connective energy, the better it will be for all of us. So those environmental challenges that take place, because all of this is in Aries, so I'm fully expecting things like volcanic eruptions, potentially some really intense storms that take place, things like lightning strikes, etc. It could be an interesting time of it for sure. Whatever those devastations potentially are, as I say, it will be us as a collective that come together to really sort it. Now, the reason this is important is because this conjunction is taking place in Aries. It happens within the first 3 degrees of the sign. And this year, we don't get it exact. They both go retrograde at different moments, which means that they'll come really close to a conjunction, but they don't actually come into like a tight, one on top of the other until 2026. But even still, they are activating this. So, the reason Aries was in bold is because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It represents the self. It represents when you have a baby being born, they come out head first most of the time, right? When you have a baby being born, this Aries energy is what you're effectively looking at, right? It's that birth point, right? That baby energy that comes in, the unstoppable power of spring. When you think about it, it's just constantly driving forward. So, as I said earlier, Aries is a cardinal sign, so it begins something, it starts the spring. It is the first sign of the zodiac, and it represents the first breath, that first moment when you come in and you go, and then you start wailing because you're like, oh, fuck me, this earth walk again. Here we go. That's why all babies are crying because they remember where they came from and they don't want to be on earth anymore. Shout out to Jake who mentioned this yesterday and how tough the earth life can be. So, this 0 point of Aries is a really powerful point because it's the end of Pisces, which is a very cosmic, broad, spiritual, sort of kind of nurturing and fertile energy. And then when we come into literally the first degree of Aries, it's very hot, it's very fiery, and it's very much about forward momentum. There's no stopping the power of spring. And if you've ever met an Aries, when they say they're going to do something, just get out of the way and let them do it. Because it's much easier on you. You don't have to deal with any of the fallout that comes after it. Now, in terms of Aries energy, because it is the birth point of the zodiac, we're talking about the beginning of the zodiac, that spring equinox energy, right? This is a moment of initiation. It's what we call the primordial spark, if you like, the warrior spirit, right? Aries is a very warlike sign. Hold on to that idea because I know obviously and the reason that I feel like this was important to open up with the numerology. Do you remember I said the nine energy is ruled by Mars? Well, the ruling planet of Aries is Mars. So we are, whether we want to be or not, we're in a very Mars orientated year. But what's really, really interesting about this is Mars is currently retrograde and in the sign of Cancer. Now, this is a big deal for so many reasons, but let me just continue to finish off with this last part. As a universal gateway, this is where we come out of that collective energy of Pisces and we start stepping into the Aries energy. So it can very much trigger global shifts, and I'm really expecting it to do so. Now, as I said, we're in a Mars ruled year, right? Mars, the planet of action, energy, passion, excitation, war, conflict, is currently in the sign of Cancer. Now, if you know anything about the sign of Cancer, Cancer is about the domesticity, it's about the home, it's about comfort, it's about nurturing and nourishing. If Aries is the newborn, Cancer is the mother. So what happens when the energy of the newborn, the fiery, passionate, forward momentum energy of conflict and challenge and just get out of my bloody way and let me do it comes into a sign that's like, no, no, let's sit at the table, let's have some food, be nice, be kind, that it's got that domestic kind of energy to it. Well, Mars doesn't do so well in Cancer. But what I love about this is quelling the fire of Mars. It's making Mars a lot more considerate. It's asking us all to take that energy that we have and maybe put it towards something that's more constructive. It's potentially going to see, because it's retrograde, we're going to see a return to Cancerian actions and or values. So this nine energy that rules the year suddenly becomes a lot more compassionate, a lot more humanitarian, and it has a lot more care for things because the ruler of the year starts the year in a sign that is all to do with mothers, women, traditional ideas and values. It's about protection. It's about defense. Cancer is nurturing and nourishing. It's a very watery and intuitive sign. So this is from, in some way, shape, or form, this is us reassessing our energy and how we use that energy. It's seeing us get creative around our emotional healing and others. For those of you that are in energy work or energy healing or do healing sessions for other people, this is going to be a really great year. You'll be able to get really good results with your clients as long as you don't shy away from the hard conversations or the real digging into the emotions that are really going to count to dispel. And the reason I say that is because even if it is Mars in Cancer, it's still Mars. Get proactive about smashing those emotional blocks. Get serious about what you need therapy around or how your energy worker can help you. Be honest with your clients and say, listen, you're blocked here. I've done what I can, but you're going to have to do the heavy lifting here. Giving people a bit more of that sort of self-responsibility back in in their hands. It's about really being proactive with this stuff. Now, the other way that this could show up is it helps us build emotional resilience, right? It also helps us, and I will say, because it's Mars energy as well, this might be about some redefining of the roles in the home. I am definitely going to say we might see more of a rise in the house husband this year, while women go on to say, right, it's my turn to smash this corporate crap now, let's go, right? So you might see a lot of that. I definitely feel like this transit is going to be doing a lot. Now, the reason this is important is because in the chart, Mars started its retrograde here in Leo, right? So way back when in December of 2025, Mars hit 6 degrees of Leo and then it turned retrograde. And so before that, it will have gone through Cancer I think it was just at the tip of November, it entered into the sign of Leo. So it passed that 0 degree, right? So 0 degrees of Leo, and that activated the 0 degree of Aries, right? Now, this is important because the reason I've got the triangle here is in astrology, we've got what's known as a trine, and a trine is a harmonious energy. So, the first cut, Mars is the surgeon, it's the scalpel, it's the laser, it's the scissors. The first cut that took place at that 0 degree of Leo sent positive energy to the 0 degree of Aries. And truth be told, the 29th degree of Cancer and the 29th degree of Pisces. But we're talking about the fire here, right? Even with the nodes of the moon currently in Virgo and Pisces, we are in a very fire and air fueled year, right? So we've come out of a very feminine energy in a sense into a very masculine energy. Now, that 0 degree and that 0 degree have been activated. Well, the 0 degree of Aries has already been activated. So this kind of suggests that there's big stuff taking place on the wider world stage. Now, there's a practice called mundane astrology, which represents where you look at countries, nations, the flow of the populace of the world in general. Now, if we take Leo to represent the fifth sign or the fifth house, this is going to bring some very, very interesting conversations to the forefront in so many ways. Now, where are we? The reason this is important is because it activated this, right? So what comes next is on March the 2nd, Venus, the lady of luck, values, pleasure, money, resources. Although, truth be told, Venus doesn't actually rule money. She rules the value that we get from money. She's like the goods, the tangible, the gold, right? All of those luxurious things. Venus is going to go retrograde on the 2nd of March at 10 degrees of Aries, right? So she starts her retrograde in the sign of Aries, and guess what? As she retrogrades in Aries, she's going to pass back over that 0 degree of Aries, right? And back into the sign of Pisces. Now, this is important because it's going to see all of us, the whole world, in some way. We're going to be reevaluating our self-worth, right? We're going to be thinking about how we can bring more compassion and maybe really take care of and nurture more of our relationships by understanding what we want from and get out of them. Now, let me say this in another way because I think this is a really important point. Venus is the planet of relating, connecting, harmony, balance. She's also the planet of, oh my gosh, come on, brain, relationships in general, partnerships, and diplomacy. Now, when it's in the sign of Aries, this puts an emphasis on what do I want and need out of relationships. And, with the amount of people that I see in terms of client work, some of the problems that people run into in their relationships or their partnerships, whether that's personal, professional, or platonic, it's not that they're not giving enough, it's that they don't speak up or advocate enough for themselves in that relationship. And so resentment builds and it causes a problem in that connection or that partnership. This Venus in the sign of Aries going retrograde is going to get us to shift our values on a personal level about what we're getting out of our relationships and what we need to get out of them to feel good in them, which is how we end up giving our best. This is going to be a shift of values, right? It brings a powerful transition from individualism to a more spiritual alignment. Why? Because it's coming back into the sign of Pisces. So we're going to see like this dual aspect where this 0 point of Aries is going to be scrubbed clean. And if we're taking this to represent humanity as a whole, this means that there's some kind of reboot or shift taking place in our consciousness and therefore in the way that we act out in the world and towards each other. Financial reassessment for sure, right? How we spend our money, what we spend our money on. Remember, Venus is money, luxury, it's goods, all of those things. The next one, as if that wasn't enough for us, where are you? Mercury is going to go retrograde on the 15th of March in the sign of Aries, and then it's going to reverse back over, you guessed it, the 0 point of Aries. Now, a Mercury retrograde happens around 3, 4 times a year, gets everybody's wires crossed. We all get pissed off with each other and say, I bloody sent you that email and you never got anything and it went to some obscure location and then bam, right? It goes back to normal. So we're used to Mercury retrogrades. The reason I think this one is impactful is because it's following suit of Venus, like hot on her heels, quite literally, and also because it's scrubbing over again that 0 point of Aries. So there's a lot of concentrated energy taking place there. To be a time to revisit decisions. It will definitely help us find a bit more emotional clarity if we're willing to open up and talk about things. It might even help us redefine our communication style to be more encompassing and inclusive. As if that wasn't enough, on the 29th of March, we've got a new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. This is the last one in this it's the last one in this energy really, right? Because we've had eclipses in Libra and Aries now for about 18 months at this point. So we've already had the nodal shift. This is only a partial eclipse, so it won't have like the full weight, but it will definitely be highlighting a few things. It's in the sign of Aries. It's at like, I'm fairly certain this one's at, going to say like 8 degrees. I can't remember off the top of my head. Um, New beginnings with courage, absolutely, right? It's bringing us a really strong sort of push forward. And when we think about eclipses, these are grand initiation points where we go in brand new directions. So wherever that There's another typo for you. Wherever that push point or wherever that sign of Aries is in your own chart, whatever house it occupies, it's going to see a massive revamping. And because a new moon solar eclipse is it's like a new moon on steroids. This tends to be where something big is initiated in some way, shape, or form. Now, another way that this will be is initiating change. Aries as the sign of the self, as I said earlier, we're really looking at our identity in some way. The world's identity could be shifting yet again. This is looking at the balance between what I want and need for myself and what I'm willing and prepared to give to others. And then also new seeds, right? I will say, if you're a manifesting type, this is not really a good energy to do manifesting on because with an eclipse, it's a wild card. You never really know exactly what you're going to get. So it's better to wait to see what unfolds. And then when you see the things that you think, actually, yeah, I could get on board with that, you lean into it as opposed to just kind of going in your own direction and saying, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to make that happen. Because the eclipse, it tends to be like, I see this as like a toolbox. It's like the universe gives you a little toolbox and says, right, I'm giving you this because you're going to need it. You can pull out every tool, or you can just wait and see what's in the bag as it unfolds, right? For those of you that are, have ever put together any IKEA flat pack furniture, you've got two types of people. Some will say, screw the instructions and they just get started, and they go straight in for it. And some people will sit and read the instructions. Whichever one you are is totally up to you. But just know that the best way to use an eclipse is usually to see what unfolds first. As if all of that wasn't enough, right? All of that takes place. And then we've got this. Right, so March, as you can see, we've got and we've got another eclipse in the site in the month of March as well, which is a Virgo eclipse, which is why I haven't included it here because it doesn't really fit with what I'm talking about. But March, as you can see, is already shaping up to be a pretty monumental month. It'll be fast, it'll be furious, it'll be powerful, it'll be dynamic, right? So hang on to your seats, as they say. Um, is it this? No, it's this one. So then we have that's supposed to be March. I apologize. Um, on, with me just a second. Just want to make sure I've got it. No, that's supposed to be March. I apologize. On the 30th of March, as if we haven't had bloody enough by this point, right? With your eclipses and your Venus retrograde, your Mercury retrograde, your eclipse. And then on top of that, Neptune decides to be so bold as to say, well, you know what, guys, I'm going to join the party. So it comes into the sign of Aries. We haven't had this for, I think it's like a 200 plus years cycle. It's about 160 plus years actually onwards. That's huge, right? This is a massive moment for humanity. It's a huge moment. If we're alive at this time, and for those of you that know Anne's work, for those of you that are into FLP, we slip around in time all the time and we see various different things. And so a lot of you understand the concept when I say, like, you chose this time to be alive. You've chosen a really potent and powerful moment, whether you are, 16 or 65. You're here at an incredible time of human history because human history, well, that we know. We're more advanced at this point than any of us understand in our lifetime, right? So we're seeing this at a point where we really have the historical reasoning and also the future forward consideration to say, what does this actually mean for us? So Neptune is a spiritual energy. It's a transcendent energy. It represents melding with the divine and connecting to the cosmos or the universe. It's watery and gaseous. Neptune is mystical and magical. It's fantasy and illusion. So to give you an idea of how this can sometimes play out, think about Marilyn Monroe. absolute sex symbol, beautiful. You know, men wanted her, women wanted to be her. I mean, it's what, 2024, 2025, and I'm still talking about Marilyn Monroe, right? That's the kind of energy that it can give you. She had Neptune on the ascendant. And so it works in a lot of ways, kind of like a magnifying glass. So imagine then that this energy of Neptune moves out of the sign of Pisces and it's sitting at 29 degrees at the moment. And what is it going to do? It's going to come in and it's going to sit at that 0 degree. And then it's going to get to about 2.5 to 3 degrees of Aries. And then it hits the brakes and turns retrograde. But this is huge, right? And it will come back into the sign of Pisces. And then in 2026, it will go into Aries full time along with Saturn. Now, this is a pretty big deal. This is spiritual courage in a way, really coming forward for us to find our guts and our grit to pursue, right? Our spirituality and our compassion, and to channel our compassion into actually getting things done. You know, like we've always kind of been heard like, well, you know, sometimes anger can get things done, and sometimes, well, what if we didn't need that? What if we could just literally demand more from our leaders? What if we could literally just say, right? And Aries is a sign of leadership. And I said this in the talk that I put out with Anne yesterday on the summit. We're going to be holding our leaders a lot more accountable. It's not going to be enough for them now to say like, oh yeah, well, you know, I'll do this when I get into office. If they don't do it within the first 3 to 5 years of their, well, in the first 3 to 6 months, I would say actually, of their term, people are going to be like, get them out. They lied to us. We're not interested in that. And it will get to a point, as we've seen as well. Shout out to Jojo, who told us what humanity is going to be like in 150 years from now. It tells us that moving forward, our spiritual senses are going to start to really get a lot more refined, which means we as a collective will know when our leaders are lying to us. We're going to know when we're not getting the truth. We're going to feel that something is different about what we're being told, and we won't buy it anymore. Now, Aries is the sign of the self, the sign of the ego. Well, what happens with Neptune? Neptune dissolves things. It's going to soften that Aries energy. So, ego dissolution, right? It's going to encourage a shift from that self-centered approach around everything that we've got at the moment that we had in the earth ages. We're now in an air age, right? It's going to see us being more unified and hoping for, and, you know, bringing a more spiritual purpose in for and via humanity. Is going to see us transmuting conflict into unity, right? We're getting rid of this idea. Now, I'm saying all of these things and they sound wonderful. They sound really, really lovely. It's like, yay, excellent. 2025 is bringing all the fluff and the rainbows. In order to get to these points, you can imagine what's going to need to take place, right? So there are going to be some ravines over the next, I mean, 2025 to 2030 is going to be an incredible period of change. We're moving forward with revolutionizing our ideas and finding what actually works for everybody as a whole. Neptune, just like Uranus, which I'm going to talk about later, represents an energy that is truly altruistic, where, you know, this isn't just about me, it's about us, it's about we as a collective. So that Neptune energy is going to soften the Aries energy, quelling the fires, anger, passion, war, challenge, conflict. Neptune's the sea, right? When you think about war as like a fiery thing, what happens when the planet of water douses the fire of Aries? We get a bit more of a softer approach to things. And I really do feel that this year it's going to be like you see this as a trend where people are like, ugh, that person's like inciting war. How gross is that? Do you know what I mean? Like, whereas before it would be like, yeah, get in there and get them, right? Whereas this is going to shift. It will be slow, but it will be steady and it will be prevalent. As if all of that wasn't enough, this year we also have Saturn moving into Aries. what's going to happen? It moves out of the sign of Pisces, and you guessed it, it goes over that 0 degrees. Saturn's going to reach about 1.5 to 2 degrees, and then when it retrogrades, it will come back into Pisces. So far, Venus, Mercury, Neptune, and Saturn are all passing over that 0 degree, coming back over it into Pisces, and then in 2026, we'll go back into Aries full time. So this zero, and this is why I'm highlighting this, because this 0 degree of Aries is absolutely getting hammered. And if it represents us as a whole, as humanity, glad Aries isn't stubborn. So you can imagine how it's going to go, Richard, right? You can imagine how these changes are, and then it's not going to be an easy time of it, but it will be one that I think we all remember for a very long time to come as a time that really kick-started. Remember what I said about cardinal signs? They usher in the start of something. So this stuff that's happening at this Aries 0 degree point, it is just the start. We're just seeing sort of like the little trickles of what this is likely to mean for us, but we are starting to get a really much clearer picture of like, oh, okay, this is potentially how this shows up. Discipline in action. Saturn, the hard taskmaster. You're going to do what needs to be done. Saturn always says, I want you to do it the hard way. I want you to do it the long way. I want your blood, sweat, tears, and grit. I'm not interested in shortcuts. I always see Saturn as like, like that drill sergeant that was like, don't fucking look at me, Private, you better get your butt moving. And everyone's like, oh my God, like, you should be like, I got nothing left in the tank. And they're like screaming at you, better bloody find it, I don't care. That's Saturn. And then at the end of the transit, you know what he does? He takes off his hat and he gives you a massive hug and says, well done, boyo, you did it. That's what Saturn wants from you. Hard work, discipline, focus, dedication. But it also rules restriction and, it puts limits on things. When we think about Saturn, it's got the rings. That's where that idea of limitation, boundaries comes from. And also, Saturn is the last visible planet to the naked eye. So it represented like the final sort of you could nothing existed beyond there. And then we got telescopes and thought, oh, wasn't that a stupid idea? Right? So you come into it now, and that Saturn energy joins the party in Aries. Discipline in your actions. If there were ever a time for you to get really focused, to be super calculated about where you go with this, and the reason I'm saying this, everything that happens up until this point will be calling for your focus and your attention. It's the greatest currency that you are in charge of in 2025 and beyond. Your attention, what you focus on, what you buy into, what you talk about, what you consume, what you read, all of it. They are going to do I mean, they're already doing it, quite frankly, now. They're going to do their utmost, quote unquote, Raph under his tinfoil hat, right? They are going to do their best to put hype and spin and to distract you. They're going to try to use this Neptune in Aries energy to deceive you or to confuse you. Luckily, the universe said, nah, not my children, and put Saturn in the mix for us to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep my focus. I'm going to kill my doom scrolling. I'm going to get out of this idea that I have to be constantly jacked into everything. I'm going to pick a focus. I'm going to pick a true north. I'm going to dedicate myself to that. Restructuring leadership. I've got no doubts that Saturn and Neptune and the erosion of that zero Aries point, we're going to see a few leaders topple and we're going to see a few leaders replaced. And at the end of this, Anne, can you remind me? I have a couple of answers for Tate. He asked me a question about Labour earlier, yesterday. Ego versus collective responsibility. Saturn is responsibility. So this is kind of saying, right, you got to get yourself right and so that you can be better for the collectives and the communities that you're a part of. Restrained aggression, the idea of anything or anyone that's doing warmongering, this could really help actually say, right, you know what? No, we're not going to war. No, we're not doing any of that. I'm not going to guarantee that we see peace immediately in 2025, but it's definitely the start of it. Blurred lines between authority and the ideals. All right, and we're definitely going to see some of that. And what's the only worrying thing about this for me, and I'm gonna mention this. I don't want to scare anybody, but I'm saying this because this community that we're a part of and that Anne's built is incredible, and I know a lot of you really value our freedom of speech, and I think it's a really important thing to mention. Saturn and Neptune coming into a conjunction, as we saw the fall of the Berlin Wall previously. You know, I mentioned the last one in 1952 prior to that, and what it could bring. If Aries is the sign of the self, what happens when that self has serious limits imposed? And then we add this to it. I've got this sneaking suspicion, and it's something that my astrology teacher confirmed for me, that there may be a further encroachment on freedom of speech. What we talk about, when we talk about it. Truth be told, they haven't got a freaking chance because of this. All right, and I'm going to be talking about that shortly. They haven't got a chance with that, but you know, just to say, there will be moments of, you know, let's sow some doubt and some confusion. We use that Neptune to our advantage, but you hold your true north with that Saturn. You don't look at any of the distractions. You stay focused on where you're actually going, right? Um, that freedom of speech energy, I want you to hold on to it with everything that you have, whether it's that you speak up, whether it's that you join a protest, whether it's that you share information. You know what's really, really, I'm going to put something forward here that I think is potentially going to ruffle a few feathers, Anne. So I'm going to apologize right now. Um, I believe that protecting people to be able to be themselves and live their own lives is really, really important. Let me start with that. However, we do at this moment in time live in what I call the age of political correctness gone mad. And with Facebook now, and so far, certain things have been allowed, certain things have been said, you know, and that movement or some of those movements have been protected up until this point. Now, Facebook, Instagram are coming forward with new laws, right? To say we're getting rid of the fact checking, you know, we're going to allow people to say what they want to say and all the rest of it. We're not. The reason I think that that is happening, it is a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but now that I've got the astrology to kind of coincide with this, I feel like I'm somewhat justified in saying this. They're now repealing all of this, and what this means is you're going to see people in the comments, on videos, on you know all of their platforms absolutely trashing each other. You can see it now, but it's going to get a lot worse. Now that there's no more fact checking and censorship and all the rest of it in that regard, it's going to get worse. And the reason that I feel that this has happened is because when it reaches a boiling point and it all starts to kick off and potentially sort of go off, you know, from the online world and come into the offline world, at that point, they then come forward and say, oh, well, we need a solution to this, and it looks like taking away more of your freedoms. Be mindful of this, right? Rally against it in any way, shape, or form as you can. As I say, I'm a huge advocate of everyone being who they are, feeling how they feel, believing what they believe, all of that kind of stuff. But that is now effectively being used against us, and I really feel that it's an important thing that I had to sort of bring up. So and I've had to keep it as vague as possible because I don't want to, you know, I never want to upset anybody, but at the same time, it's important that we remain autonomous. I want that compassionate society. I want these communities where we can all be ourselves and connect and it's all lovey-dovey. But in order to get there, it needs to be done right. And more importantly, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. End of. Okay, enough with the heavy. So, take a breath. Does anyone want a break? Because I realize I've been going at you for almost an hour now. Yeah?
Yeah, I'll just grab a drink. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll be back in just a moment as well. I'm gonna get some water. Okay. So, Jupiter in Cancer. I personally am quite looking forward to this one, just because I think it's going to be a really lovely transit. And I think after everything that we've kind of put up with at this point, the second half of the year is decidedly a lot more peaceful. It's a lot quieter. This first 6 months, this first half of 2025 is a bit full on with a real peak moment in March. As I say, like March is it's just a big month, right? But June the 7th, Jupiter, the Lord of growth, expansion, abundance, happiness, levity, it also rules things like celebrity, etc., comes into the sign of Cancer. Jupiter also represents protection. It also represents the law. It also represents, or it, stands as the lawmaker or the lawbringer. So, moving into the sign of Cancer, the domestic sign, a sign of women, a sign of emotional contentment, and a sign of reflection, a sign of traditional values. It also represents the energy of nurturing and nourishment. So, we're going to see big focuses on these things. One of the predictions that I am making is some kind of reform in the law to protect or to look after women in some way, shape, or form, which I think is going to be really important. I think it may see new rights given to mothers in particular. It may even see, I'm really interested to see what happens with the Roe v. Wade thing with this. I just got this sneaking suspicion that it might be reopened or, maybe re-examined in some way. Cancer also represents the intuition. This is peak spiritual and intuitive power, right? Jupiter is the planet of the visionary, of future. Yes, it's true that Uranus is that as well. But truthfully speaking, Jupiter in Cancer energy, it's going to heighten whatever intuitive faculty you have. So wherever this is in your chart, you will definitely be feeling a bit of an amplification. It's going to bring blessings to you. Jupiter is what we call the great benefic. So it's going to expand, it's going to grow, it's going to enhance, it's going to make bigger or make better whatever planets you have in Cancer. Now, truth be told, it will do other things as well. You know, no, unfortunately, no transit in astrology works on its own. But it's going to be a wonderful transit, and the reason for that is this is Jupiter's favorite sign to be in. When in ancient astrology, a planet in its quote unquote exaltation is said to bring its best qualities forward. So it's where it really does very good work. Jupiter in Cancer is home, family, security, emotional well-being. Historically, as well, this brings things like women's rights to the fore, absolutely. It'll be a focus on bringing domestic security. Now, this will be in all kinds of ways, right? So, this will be, you're probably going to hear the government really pushing this idea of how can we strengthen the family? You know, how can we support young families? Because ultimately, and this is not to discount myself or anyone that doesn't fall into that bracket, but the family unit or the certainly the young family, it's the backbone and the lifeblood of the bloody country. You know, that's where the bulk of everything happens. So if you're going to support something to make the economy and the people and the country strong, start there. You know, it makes sense to me. Nurturing justice and expansion. Law and governance, these are things that are going to be really brought more compassion coming into them. I know with the advent of obviously everything that happened with George Floyd, etc., there's been a focus on the police and, all of the governing regimes, etc. But Jupiter coming into Cancer, I actually think this is where we're going to see mental health support for police officers, where we're going to see them actually start to be supported in a way that actually makes them better at their jobs because it makes them more compassionate. So I'm really looking forward to that because, I mean, especially if you come from Britwell, the old Bill definitely get a bad rap, don't they, Anne? No days off for them. But truth be told, we don't look at it from the other side to say, actually, if you're military personnel or, if you're a police officer, think about the amount of crap that they have to deal with every single day just for putting on their uniform and going to work. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm their best friends or their best advocates, but they are still human beings. If they're treated as such and given mental health support and sensitivity training and compassion training, I think it's going to really help everybody on the ground that much more. Um, Now, a shift to traditionalism. Even though Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is, a wild, if you know any Saggies, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sagittarius is a wild sign. Pisces, right, as gentle as they are, they're quite secretive. There's a lot that hides in a Pisces, I can assure you, right? As boundless as the energy of Jupiter can be, it is still a somewhat right is right and wrong is wrong kind of energy. So when it comes into this, we could see a shift towards more of a traditional way of looking at things, traditional values. That's what Cancer really is. It's that Cancer thinks about thinks about the personal community, which is the family, right? Now, for some of us, we've got a chosen family versus like an actual family. Whereas Leo is their kids. If you ever want to see the dark side of a Leo, say something about one of their kids. It's ferocious, right? And it's the same thing with Cancer. My family, anyone that's considered my family, that's where you see Mama and Papa Bear come out. Emotional laws and policies. Now, if Jupiter is the lawmaker, it may very well see, us focused on nurturing more well-being in the areas of education, because Jupiter represents education as well, healthcare and housing. These are three sort of areas that we're definitely going to see an amplification of how do we make these better. Now, The last thing that I want to talk about is the focus on patriotism. Jupiter in Cancer is very much how do we strengthen our country? Now, I believe that this is true for everybody. I'm not saying don't help people in need. I'm not saying don't offer support to people that need to flee really awful, dangerous situations. What I am saying is, while you're doing that, strengthen your own infrastructure and country as well. The better we are and the more complete we are, the more we're able to help others, right? So let's get our homeless off the street as well. Let's create safe spaces for people to go. Really, really important. And this feeds into your question, Tate, as well from yesterday, which I went over. At first, I was like, oh, I don't know, because it's politics. I don't usually do that because it's divisive, but I couldn't help it. I had a little niggle, and I was like, okay, just have a look at the chart of Labour and see what's going on there. And I think you will probably be a little bit distressed, Tate, by the time I've finished, actually. If you don't like the Labour Party, you might not like what I'm about to say. And then finally, some historical moments in 1965 to 66 in the US. The Supreme Court ruled that married couples have the right to access contraception, and a landmark case for women's reproductive rights and privacy. And this was all under a Jupiter Cancer transit. In the I think it was in the UK, we had Clare's Law, right? And that was about allowing individuals to inquire about a partner's domestic, history of domestic violence. Um, really interesting stuff. Okay, so what I really like about the Jupiter in Cancer is we're going to see a big focus on creating more food security. Cancer's the sign of the stomach and it also rules the breasts, right? So when you think about a baby, the baby, right? When you think about the baby and how it feeds and all the rest of it, Cancer is about food. It's about sustenance, what nourishes us to kind of move, to grow effectively, bringing in more security, maybe around the pricing of food, more sustainability, all of those kinds of things could be showing up for us as well, which I'm totally here for. Humanitarian efforts and refugee crises are also things that are looked at under this. I just think it's going to be more balanced, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And it needs to be.
Mm.
Okay. So, Uranus into Gemini. I am so excited for this one. We're only getting a little bit of a taste, right? If Uranus represents sudden change, changes of direction, the breaking of the old, the breaking of karmic ties and chains, it represents everything that is new, different, avant-garde. It's got like a lightning electric energy. If Capricorn and Saturn represents like top-down government, Uranus is where, like, the states of America would say, right, each state is its own sovereign nation and they will decide as their own community rather than we decide for everybody. I'm really, really excited about this one because Uranus is kind of like, you know how like thought happens? Like you have a thought about something and then all of a sudden you're having a conversation in your head with someone from bloody 20 years ago where you didn't get one up on them in the conversation. That's how thought works, right? It's your 1 minute you're here, the next minute you're there. Just like FLP, and which is why this is the time, lady. It's like you, who knew? Anne was completely jacked into the future, right? It's unfolding and it's just incredible. I love this. This is bringing change. It's bringing a new wave of communication. It's bringing a new understanding of what education is actually important for us. It's bringing a whole new idea of a system of government to say, actually, that one person in charge of everybody, that model just doesn't work anymore. We need to decide as what is a true democracy. So our community will decide what's good for our community because we make up that community. What I love about this on a bodily or, physiological level, Gemini represents the mind. It represents communication. It's our speech patterns, our cadence of our speech. Shout out to Marilyn yesterday. She asked a really incredible question, which was about telepathy. I put out a post in 2022 about Uranus in Gemini, and in that post, I postulated that by the time we're finished with this transit, so 7th of July through to November 8th, so we only get like a little taster of it this year. It doesn't go in full time until 2026, and then it will be there until like 2030. I think it's 2033 or 2034. So we get a nice, juicy sort of amount of time for this to do its work. This is going to be where we start to see telepathy coming online. We're going to start to see the human being really evolve. We're going to start to see new ways of communicating, new, faster ways of communicating, the technology that we're going to see. What we have now, by the time Uranus is finished in Gemini, ChatGPT is going to look like an egg. Right? Like by the time we're finished with it, like literally, we will just be absolutely floored by what we now know and actually has been released as being possible. This idea of this unilateral government instead of top-down government is important. And the reason I think this is important is because, as we know, there's so many things that are hidden from us. ChatGPT was being used by all the engineers and stuff like 10 years before we got it. And then it was like, okay, well, this is obsolete now, so we're going to give it to the peasants. And I'm like, okay, so what have they been doing for the last 10 years? And now what are they using that we're not privy to? Right? Like this Uranus transit is going to make all of this stuff so much more commonplace. Now, one of the ways that this could happen, Mr. Musk, is that, people say, right, well, like now in this age, everyone's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go and get my teeth done. I'm getting a facelift. I'm getting my boobs done. In the future, it will be like, yeah, I'm getting my chip next year so that I can, run as fast as an antelope. Or, like it will be cyber enhancements that happen to the human body. That's what we could potentially see. I personally don't see it just as that. I see this as actually I see this really as the mind of humanity gets a really incredible upgrade, right? This is where our faculties for communication come online in massive, sort of much bigger ways. Revolutionary communication, right? Breakthroughs in technology and communication that are just incredible. Like if we think we've got fast internet now, it's going to be, like literally instant. And, I'd say this is the age of superpowers. It could be the activation of latent human potential. I don't know if you remember years ago, I'm showing my age now, when I was at school, there was a program called Roswell. It was one of those like teeny drama things, but it was about this guy who was an alien, and he had his brother and sister who were also aliens, and basically they all had these amazing powers that they could, use. And when he finally met up with the people from his planet, he said, why is it that we have all of these powers? Like, well, is this, are we all like this on our planet? And the guy said to him, no, the things that you can do are human, but they're human 2,000 years from now. Right. So, and yes, okay, it was a kid's show, but that gave me goosebumps because I was like, wow, that's human potential. And this is the start of it, right? We here, no matter what our age is, we are here at a moment in history that's never been seen and where we are likely to be seeded with the kind of energy that sees human beings advance in some really incredible ways. I'm so excited for this. There's going to be radical shifts in thought. Gemini it's your thought, right? It's your communication, it's how you interact with people, it's your websites, it's the media that you use. All of that stuff is going to change, right? Like this idea of I don't even know if we'll have phones before by the time this transit is done. We might not even need them. right? It might just be that you've got like a, I don't know, a special tattoo on the side of your ear, right? That just, it may very, I laugh, but actually it could be, right? We're going to see some incredible technological advancements over this time, absolutely. Now, Gemini, with the rough comes the smooth. Gemini is a dual-bodied sign. It represents both hands. For that reason, it is possible that because Uranus, it blows things apart. Interestingly enough, Uranus is the planet of divorce. So when you see this and you consider that Gemini is a sign that uses both hands to do everything, we could see some very polarizing times, ideas, etc., put forward in 2025 and beyond. And when that starts to happen, I want you to remember this. Keep your true north. Don't let them use the astrology and the transits to get you distracted. Stay on your grind, stay on your task, right? There's so many people that are like, oh, ChatGPT is going to make us all obsolete. They're not focusing on how to learn how to use it to make their business better. It's here to stay. Don't get locked into this. I'm going to rage against the machine because that machine's going to be here. That's it. It's here. Learn how to use it to your advantage, right? Get it in your remit, get it under your belt in some way. A global network of minds, shared thoughts. If we thought the world became small now, we we all know what happened to the Luddites, right? Literally, right? Um, Creating global networks of thought. This is going to be like, I feel like, like in all countries, they've got think tanks where they come up with ideas and stuff. Imagine one of those, but like on a global level. That's what I'm talking about. It really has the potential to be incredible. So these are effectively the biggest transits of the year. A lot of these transits, sorry, one second. A lot of these transits really are just a little taster, right? Certainly with Saturn and Neptune, we're just getting tasters, and Uranus. It's just a little taster this year. We get a little heads up. And personally, I like those little heads up because in 2023, if anyone remembers, Pluto dipped its toes into Aquarius, and we got a little taster of what that was going to look like for the future. Personally, I like that because I'm seeing it as kind of like an inoculation against the shock. You're going to get a little taster this year so that you know what to expect in 2026. And I'm calling 2025 the reboot of humanity. It's like we're switching it off to switch it back on again, which is great. But more importantly, this year, um, and I want to ask you guys, anybody in the chat, please say yes, say no. Have you ever been to one of those restaurants where they prepare everything in the kitchen in front of you? Yeah, so there's lots of preparation going on, but they do it right there in front of you. 2025 is a year of deep preparation for 2026, but you're not doing it behind the scenes. You can't scurry away and be like, oh, I'm in my little cancer cave doing my thing. You're not going to have time for that. You're going to be building what you're creating while you are doing it in full view of everybody, right? Just like that kitchen. And that's why I've given you that visual. You're going to be like, okay, well, I'm trying this out. Is it working? No. Okay, well, that's cool. I'm going to scrap that. People on my YouTube channel are like, Raf, you were consistent for 5 or 6 years. What the hell is going on? Right, I'm all over the place doing all kinds of stuff. You know what? Why not? If you can't beat it, you might as well ride that bloody wave. Get your surfboard out, guys, because 2025 is going to be an interesting and fun and dynamic year. Before I get on to the Labour stuff, Anne's favourite question. Will it be a good year? I've given you all this waffle about communities and all the rest of it. Will it be a good year? If you can connect and create community, if you can collaborate with as many people as possible, if you can build a network, and more importantly, do whatever you can, and it doesn't have to always mean money. Sometimes the greatest gift that you can give someone is your time. It doesn't have to be resources. It can literally be, a helping hand, a listening ear, looking out. Like later on, I've got a Zoom call with my sister. She wants me to go over her presentation with her, and I'm like, yeah, excellent, right? All things like that. Sometimes that's what you need to give. Be as charitable, as compassionate, and as kind as you possibly can to the natural world and to the people in your world, and this will be a good year for you. Oh, and also remember this. If there's anything I can drum into your bloody head this year, don't get distracted, right? Stay focused. Um, Now, Ray has a very good question, and that was, where's the chat? Let me see, let me see. What are the best dates to put out programs and or run workshops? Truth be told, it would depend on what type of workshop it is. So if it's something like really brand new that you've never done before, you want to wait until at least the 15th of April. If you can stomach it, the 18th of April onwards, right up to and including July. And the reason for that is once we get to that point in April, all the retrograde energy of this first quarter of the year is done. And then we've got a straight shot right through to, I think it's like June, no, it's July. And then we've got a straight shot until July where we've got no retrograde energy. So it's kind of like the true start of the year should be January, but 2025, it's actually April. Uh, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, Tate, my man, you asked the question about Labour. Now, don't shoot the messenger, all right? I'm just going to premise with that. So, this first chart, I had a look at them, I Googled them to find out. So, I don't have an exact time, unfortunately, but what I do have is can you see that chart? Is everybody able to see that chart? Yeah, okay, sweet. So this is the chart for Labour, right? So this is when they were incepted, when they were born effectively. They've got a Cancer rising, very interesting, because this suggests a few things, that it really was about creating more nurturing and nourishing for the people. The people in this chart, this is a whole sign chart. There's a lot of people that wouldn't use whole sign, but I find it's easier, and especially for something that's as broad strokes as this. The seventh house then would be we the people, Saturn in Capricorn. So it's like we the people demand that you be more responsible. Now, the ruler of this chart is the moon. The moon is in the sign of the people, Aquarius. So when it was started, at least, Labour truly was about the people. It was about the common bottom denominator man who, worked his bloody nuts off, as they say, to put food on the table for his family, or women actually as well, because we know even then, right, they just weren't talked about at that point. So it really was that. Now, the reason I found this, and I'm really glad that I listened to the intuitive nudge because I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I got this really powerful sense that it was like, no, Raf, you need to look at this chart because there's a few things that are going to be highlighted, to it that you will learn and actually that other people need to know. So I found this really interesting. Do we remember all the stuff that I talked about with that 0 degree of Aries? 0 degree of Aries represents the 10th house, or what's known as the MC of the Labour Party, where they have Venus. The values of this party are very much, about the worker, about, all of that kind of stuff. And because it's in the 10th house, it's very public, right? It's what's important to them. Now, what's interesting to me and what's I've found fascinating is that 0 degree is going to be activated a lot for them. Now, on the one hand, that could create a fair amount of challenges, right? And it will certainly, because whatever comes into this point of Aries at the start is straight away going to, you see that AS there? It's going to affect their ascendant. So it's going to make them, whatever's happening, we're going to see it very much publicly in the way that it plays out. However, I'm going to pull up a second chart. Pow! Don't we love technology? See, this is why we've got to keep it, right? And everything that happens in this 10th house is gonna. So that's interesting as well. Okay, I haven't got time for that. Stay focused, Raf. Saturn in Aries, right? This 0 point, whatever happens here in Aries is actually going to send positive energy to this sixth house space in the Labor chart. The first thing that all of those Aries planets are going to really tap into, certainly from the sixth house, which represents the work, or funnily enough, the labor, is Jupiter. So that Jupiter, like that Jupiter being activated in a trine from the 10th house of Aries, I have no doubt that even if the party fumbles on the way to where they're trying to get to, and they absolutely have been and will do so, they do have a lot of very supportive energy coming in that will help them get certain things sort of off the ground. One. Second, let's move this forward by some months so that we can get, come on, Saturn. Right, so you see that Neptune there? The first thing that it hits is Saturn in Capricorn in the chart of the Labour Party, right? So this is going to be a teething problem for them, absolutely. But once it passes that, it's going to hit this Jupiter. So whatever they're starting, whatever they're beginning, it will have teething problems. It will probably look like it might never get off the ground. But once it starts to gain traction, it absolutely will start to move. I think that the first, I would say, yeah, first year will probably be more of the same, to be honest, while they're really sort of finding their feet. 2026 onwards, it starts to improve. Now, I'm going to go back to bring this back to now. There's a couple of things that I also want to highlight here as well. They've got Mars retrograding into the first house. Party reform is going to happen. Whether they want to or not, it's absolutely going to have to unfold because Mars is coming back into Cancer and it's saying, right, boys, we got to cut away the crap. You got to get rid of whatever the toxic elements are. What's not working here, we need to get rid of it. We need to remove this. And yet, trine to Mercury. Right? So they're going to start saying all the right things, but we're going to need to see the action. And as I say, they will stumble. There's all of that. Now, another part of this, you've got Jupiter moving through that 12th house. It's already passed over Pluto once. This whole thing around the money, around the resources, around the spending, around the budgets, yes, they dropped the ball, but it's in the process of being righted now. That much I will fully expect. Since Jupiter is an expansion point, when it gets to that 16 degrees, which is known as the south node here of Gemini, which will only, I mean, that's only going to be a few weeks from now. Well, I say weeks, if I would say a couple of months, should I say? It's going to hit that point, and at that point, we're going to start to see a lot of jumping ship. We're going to see a lot of people being ousted, right? That coincides with what's happening in that with that Mars retrograde in the first house. And then what was the other thing that I wanted to look at here as well? Another thing that coincides with Labour being in power is that if when Labour are in power and there is a universal 9 year, somebody ends up like you know how we had Gordon Brown replace Blair? That happened in a 9 year. So we're going to see that motif repeated once more. So in answer to your question, are they perfect? By no means no. Do they have some supportive energies coming up to help them work through whatever their problems are? Yes, absolutely. Is the party going to look the same by the end of 2025? Not a chance. I hope that is a somewhat cohesive answer to your question, Tate.
Is it all right to respond, or
Yeah, absolutely.
Do.
this is this is absolutely fascinating, and just I mean I'll keep it quick, but if you maybe do a YouTube video for this and also the other major parties as well, it would be absolutely fascinating, Ralph. I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to eat into the presentation. So
Okay, yeah, do you know what? I'll think about it. And because the reason I usually stay away from politics is because once you start opening that can of worms, people just go absolutely insane. And I know myself well enough, I might not be able to leave some of the comments alone. So usually I avoid, but I had a lot of fun picking that apart. And to be fair, I think it's probably high time I get over my aversion to politics. So thank you for that suggestion. And I think I might actually take some notes and move forward with it. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
I love I mean, I keep away from politics a lot as well because people just, as you say, they do go insane. They're so rigid and so much in their echo chamber. You say anything that doesn't fit what the beliefs they've been building, they do go nuts. But the last few years, I know American recently said, don't any of you British comment on our politics because you are shuffling and changing. It's like musical chairs with you and leaders. And I thought, yeah, you're right. We can't, what can we say? So it's interesting with Farage now. He's stumbling, which people wasn't expecting. There's so much going on. What most people expect is Starmer to get kicked out, but who replaces him? Just look at them. They no, hate to say it, they look like Fraggle Rock. The lot of them. I mean, they can't even dress themselves for fuck's sake. So it'll be interesting to see what happens because who is going to step up? And I can often now I know is I look and go, could I imagine them on the world platform talking to world leaders, and that's how I often go. I just can't see that. So, it'd be very very interesting to. I think, but as you say, people will go nuts. But if you want to build your profile, that
Yeah.
would get you so much attention. Really, really would get you masses of attention.
It might be, yeah, I mean, even that, it might be worth doing. Just there's one more thing as well that I completely forgot, and
Yeah.
it's huge. So I should probably have a look at this. I can't remember, can't believe I glossed over it. Keep an eye on this guy here, Jupiter. We're talking about Jupiter in Cancer. Look what happens when we get to June. Jupiter comes into Cancer, and this is what I'm saying. Jupiter represents healing, it represents protection, it represents the law. At this point, it sounds really la-di-da and lovey-dovey, and it is going to hit that opposition to Saturn. But I definitely think that by the time we get to June and from June onwards, over the 12 months that it takes Jupiter to move through Cancer, this is where the party is quote unquote healed in some way. This is where their prominence will really start to shine, especially because Jupiter does very good work in the sign of Cancer. So, the fact that it's coming in here, it's going to pass over that eighth degree. Let's have a look. Let's take it forward by some weeks. So, and it's usually by the orb. So when it gets to about 5 degrees, it's going to be like the 3rd of July at this point, right? From the 3rd of July onwards, I would not be surprised if the numbers of the Labour Party start to swell. So, Anne, I think you're absolutely right. It may not be anybody that's in the party right now. it may be someone new that comes in that ends up sort of taking Mr. Starmer's place.
That makes sense to me, and there's a lot happening behind the scenes. There's so you can feel it exactly what you're saying. So much happening behind the scenes. I think, yeah, somebody could just sweep in and take over. So it's certainly going to be an interesting year. And when that American made that comment, I did cringe and laugh and say, yeah, it's just been mad. It's been the maddest few years in British
Yeah,
politics, that's for sure. Yeah, be interested. I wanted to pick up on one thing you said because Marilyn
yeah.
did this wonderful uh, meditation where she took us into the future where we could speak to either Einstein or Tesla.
Mhm.
And and then we picked a word, just one word. And it's funny when you talk about the number nine right at the beginning, the word that come to me, Einstein's, because what I actually in my mind, we were allowed to ask one question of one of these people. All this is recorded, so you can try this yourselves. The, what I said was, I've got friends all over the world in every background, but I just sort of said, how do you feel about, you're Jewish people, they seem under attack a lot, and
Mm.
what do we need to know? And as I say, I've got an Arab business partner. Do you know what I mean? I'm like
Yeah,
United Nations with how I live. My publishers were Jewish. I've just got everybody from every background around me. Um, and the answer come back, just focus on humanity. You want leaders that are focused on humanity as a whole. So when you started talking about humanity, it was like that's exactly what was coming up with Marilyn's piece. So that was really interesting. It's all about humanity as a whole.
absolutely. 100%. That's what this year is really about. And that's why, this idea of the reboot of humanity, the reason I see it as that is because it's like we're going to get back to being human. Remember what it is. Like, yes, we're going to start integrating way more with technology, etc. But it really is about us getting back to being people, right? The pandemic really did a number on all of us. It separated us in so many ways. And I think this year there's going to be a lot more focus on that. So absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
And can I just say, Richard, stop it. 'Cause you're going to make me die. Where's comments in there? It's killing me here. Any questions? Anybody got
Yeah.
any
Any
questions?
questions, guys? And what I will do is I'll put this up for now.
I've got a question, Raf. It's
Yeah,
me.
go for it, please.
Hi. I have heard, through the grapevine and stuff that a lot of people have been saying about 3 days of darkness or some great solar flash or something like that, where it will just go dark for 3 days, or there'll be a lot of energy involved in this. And I just wondered if there's any truth to that, or do you pick up anything astrologically around that, either this year or next year, or and do you pick up anything intuitively about that?
Oh,
Good question. So there are a few points, obviously. So whenever a planet changes signs, it is usually the day before, the day of, and the day after that you get that sort of real big hit of whatever is unfolding with it. Now, Uranus leaving the sign of Taurus and coming into the sign of Gemini, they're very different energies. And so I would not be surprised if on the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th of July, we have some kind of surge or overload of power. And I do see it as being that. I'm seeing like a headline where it's like, such and such server goes out as so much energy surges through it, experts can't figure out what's wrong or something along those lines. In terms of a complete blackout, I wonder if this is in response to some of the geological stuff that will take place. I don't know if you remember, I said that the Saturn Neptune conjunction will cause environmental stuff. And it may very well be like there's one of them, and I can't get this image out of my mind. It's there's like I can't remember where it is. There's that place where there's like that huge solar farm. It's just like endless rows and rows of solar panels.
Saudi?
In, uh, It might be. I can't. It's like in my head, I see sort of the ground being so disrupted that it literally breaks the network of them pulling power from the solar. So I'm yet to see if that one will happen. I'm gonna look to see if there's anything astrologically to back it up. But
Raf,
those are the two that I'm calling, and I will definitely
Raphael,
say, oh, sorry.
there's a place in Spain what has a massive solar farm. It's down towards past Almeria, going towards Seville, and it's one of the largest in Europe. And they have
I'm
a
gonna
load
have to.
on the land down
That
that
may
way.
very well be it. Because where and the place that I've been seeing has got like almost like a desert feel to it.
That's it. Yeah, it's very it's like desolate. It's actually where they used to do the spaghetti westerns down past that way. So it's 'cause I
Wow.
live in southern Spain, so the land there is very much damaged, and that's why they were very concerned when they had the Valencia floods. But further
Yeah.
down in Almeria, down that way, that's where all the solar farms are. We've got actually one they're building up here, and we've had so many issues with electricity, weather,
Yeah.
different things changing in the weather here, everything. And so it is
Oh my
something.
God. I didn't know. I'm gonna have to look because that may very well
I'll,
very
I'll,
well be
I'll
what I've
I'll
been
find it
seeing.
exactly where it is, and I'll send you the link because I do want to talk to you about a couple of things because I do Nadi astrology, so wanted to have a
Nice.
word.
Yeah, cool. All right, man. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Smeeta?
Yeah, I mean, I've read that stuff or seen videos about it being something, maybe something connected to a solar flash or something, and everything being wiped out and no sun. It would just be darkness for a couple of days and no Wi-Fi, nothing like that. So I wondered if it just
The no
shows up
sun bit.
technologically as well.
I'm not sure about that part just because of
Mm,
the physics of the whole thing.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like the idea of it being a blackout in terms of our tech not working, that tracks for sure. But in terms of like no solar output, that part doesn't. And there's usually one or two of those every few years. Just like that picture that makes the rounds that says all the planets are going to be in a single line in the sky. And it's like it doesn't happen that way. It's not actually possible from our vantage point, if that makes sense.
yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you. That's great.
No, my pleasure. Any other questions, anyone?
A
Right.
sign of the year. Yeah, what sign do you think's going to
Ooh,
really
sign of
thrive?
the year. One
Yeah.
of the luckiest signs this year, it's about bloody time, is Leo.
Oh, thank God for that. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the luckiest signs of the year will be Leo. I will say with a lot of so the cardinal signs are probably singing for joy at the moment because now that Pluto's no longer in Capricorn, these guys, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, are no longer being smashed with an iron bat. So you guys are looking in much better shape than you have been. There's a few other things that obviously I just didn't for time, etc., have time to mention, but I will say, yeah, Leo is definitely looking like the luckiest sign of the year. I think the fire signs in general are going to do pretty well. I think Aries, anyone that's an Aries, you're gonna need to, it's a lot of energy. It's not bad at all. It's just a lot of energy. And so tap into this, use this, right? There's going to be a lot of energy moving through your sign, and the only way really to navigate, um, the only way really to navigate that much energy moving through your sign is to use it. Do something with it. You are an active sign. You are the active sign, right? The sign that represents spring. Spring is an unstoppable force. So if you're an Aries, use that energy so that it doesn't pick you up and toss you up in the air and, fling you about a bit. Which you never know. Maybe that's your thing. Aries is the daredevil after all. So where you can find me on website or socials, Radiant Reality. I've got a few offers at the moment, including one where we use numerology to plan your entire year. It's a 3 hour session. It's a you and me workshop, basically, or various other bits. You can find all of that on my website. And really, well and truly, thank you all so, so much.
That was so amazing, and there's so much to look at. And when you're saying about focus, I actually this morning made the decision that I'm going to go back. How when I write a book, I just eat, sleep, and drink it till it's done. I don't come in and out 'cause it's not the way to work. And I thought this morning I've got a number of projects. I'm just going to obsessively work on one at a time until they're gone, starting with the whole year's accounts. I'm just going to obsessively work. So that everything you said really, really rings true. And I'm going to, obviously, this will get shared in a lot of places. Guys, when you get the link, I will send you the link. Do make sure you share it because people, so many astrologers, I've got no idea what they're bloody on about. And with Raf, he tells you what you need to know and he puts it in real terms. So it'd be really good to share this and get it out there. So yeah, thank you. That was so superb. Thank you so much. I love that. I'm going to stop the recording.